Today, we are diving into one of the most unbelievable, most electrifying stories in all of history. Seriously, it's the tale of how a teenage girl, out of nowhere, grabbed the destiny of a nation that was on the brink of total collapse and led it to an impossible victory. This is the story of Joan of Arc. Okay, so let's just set the scene here. Picture France in 1429. The Hundred Years' War, yeah, it's been going on for almost a century. The country is just broken. It's occupied, it's bleeding out, and the French heir to the throne, the Dauphin Charles, he's basically broke, depressed, and hiding out, not even sure if he's the legitimate king. Hope? That's a word nobody's used in a very long time. But you know, in all that darkness, there was this strange prophecy making the rounds among the common folk. Now, everyone figured the woman who lost France was Queen Isabeau. She's the one who disinherited her own son. So people were desperately looking for that virgin who was meant to save them. It kind of created this perfect opening, this space in the collective imagination for a hero to step right into. To really get the miracle of what Joan did, you first have to understand the nightmare that France was living in. The English and their allies, the Burgundians, they controlled the entire north, including Paris. The French nobility? Decimated. The kingdom was right on the verge of just blinking out of existence. And this is where she comes in. Not a knight, not a noble, Jeanne d'Arc, a deeply religious peasant girl from a little war-torn village called Domremy. And when she was just 13, she started experiencing something, well, extraordinary. She began hearing voices, and they came with this huge, blindingly bright light. Now, what's so fascinating is who was talking to her. You've got St. Michael, the warrior archangel, the patron of the entire French army. Then you have St. Catherine and St. Margaret, both virgin martyrs. So the message she's getting is this incredible mix of divine military strength and unshakable faith. And their mission for her, it was just completely and utterly impossible. Relieve the besieged city of Orléans, and then march the Dauphin hundreds of miles through enemy territory to get him crowned at Reims? No big deal, right? An impossible mission for anyone, let's be real, let alone a teenage girl who, in her own words, didn't even know how to ride a horse or fight. But her voices were clear. It is God who commands it. And so her journey began, to convince a broken kingdom to believe in victory one more time. So her first stop is the local commander, a guy named Robert de Baudricourt. He literally told her uncle to take her home and give her a good smack. But Joan just wouldn't give up. And then she did something incredible. She told Baudricourt that the French army had just suffered a horrible defeat near Orleans. Days later, a messenger shows up confirming the news, exactly as she said it. A completely stunned Baudricourt gave her an escort, and just like that, the first impossible step towards saving France was taken. After this really dangerous 11-day trek through enemy lands, she finally gets to the Dauphin's court. But Charles, he's skeptical of everything at this point, so he decides to test her. He dresses down, disguises himself as just another courtier, and has someone else pretend to be him. But Joan, guided by her voices, walks right into this huge hall, ignores the decoy, and goes straight to the real Dauphin, kneeling right in front of him. So what happened next is the real game changer. Charles pulls her aside, still not totally sold. And in that private moment, Joan tells him the exact words of a silent prayer he had made, all alone in his chapel, where he begged God to tell him if he was the rightful king and what would happen to France. There was absolutely no way, no human way, she could have known this. And in that instant, the Dauphin became a believer. But even then, he sent her to be examined by a bunch of theologians. They grilled her for weeks, trying to trap her. When they demanded she perform a sign, she gave this fiery response. She wasn't there to talk, she was there to fight. Her real sign, she promised them, would be the liberation of Orléans. Well, the theologians gave her the green light. France was about to gamble its entire future on the maid's promise of victory. All right, let's head to the battlefield. Armed with a banner showing God holding the world and a sword that was miraculously found buried behind an altar, Joan rode to war. She was about to transform from a mystic into one of the most effective military leaders in all of history. And this just shows you the sheer impact she had. The French generals were all cautious and slow. Joan was all about aggressive action. The minute she got to Orleans, she pushed for an attack. The siege that had been strangling that city for 7 long months, she broke it in 9 days. 9! She then launched this lightning campaign that cleared the entire Loire Valley of English forces in just a matter of weeks. The climax of all this was the Battle of Patay.
The English planned to do their classic move from the Battle of Agincourt, using longbowmen to just mow down the French charge. But this time, French scouts found them early. The French cavalry charged before the archers could even get set up. The result? It was a complete and total slaughter. The invincible English army was shattered. It was an absolutely stunning reversal of fortunes, and it was all driven by the momentum Joan had created. So, with the English army on the run, the road to Reims was wide open. Joan had done the first part of her mission, and now she was about to complete the second. But this incredible moment of triumph was tragically about to be followed by her downfall. On July 17, 1429, Charles VII was officially crowned king in Reims Cathedral, just like Joan had promised. And she stood right there beside him, holding her white banner. When someone asked her why her banner got such a place of honor, she gave this perfect reply. Her mission, as she saw it, was complete. She had given France its king back. But the new king, well, he got complacent. He preferred playing politics over fighting. Joan kept on fighting, but in May of 1430, during a skirmish outside a town called Compiègne, she was ambushed. As her soldiers fled back into the city, the governor raised the drawbridge, trapping her and a few of her men outside. She was captured by the Burgundians, who then sold her to the English. And the king she had made, he did nothing. No ransom, no rescue attempt, absolutely nothing. For the English, this was their big chance. See, they couldn't just kill her. They had to discredit her entire mission. They had to prove that the French king had been crowned by a witch, not a saint sent from God. And that led to one of the most famous and corrupt trials in all of history. What happened next was basically an intellectual duel. You had dozens of the most learned theologians in Europe against one illiterate 19-year-old girl. They tried to trap her with all these complex theological questions. Take that first one. Are you in God's grace? If she says yes, that's heresy, because no one can know that for sure. If she says no, it's a confession. Her answer was so brilliant, it left them speechless. And time and again, her simple, profound faith and her incredibly sharp wit just completely outmaneuvered them. Since they couldn't prove she was a witch, they cornered her on a technicality, wearing men's clothes. They threatened her with being burned alive, forced her to sign a confession she couldn't even read, and made her put on a dress. But back in her cell, she was assaulted by her guards. To protect herself, she put the male clothes back on, and that was the excuse they needed. The judge declared her a relapsed heretic, and the penalty for that was death. And on this day, in the old marketplace of Rouen, the sentence was carried out. She was just 19 years old. They built the pyre extra high, so everyone could see, and so she would burn slowly. She asked for a cross to be held up in front of her. As the fire was lit, she didn't curse her accusers. She showed no fear at all. She just called out the name of Jesus, over and over, until her very last breath. The impact was immediate. It was profound. Even her enemies knew that a terrible, terrible injustice had just happened. This quote from an English official who was actually there, it just shows that in the very act of trying to destroy her, they had created a martyr. And history would prove him right. 25 years later, a new trial was held that completely cleared her name, declaring her innocent and the original verdicts totally fraudulent. And then, centuries later, in 1920, the peasant girl who was burned as a heretic was recognized by the very same church as a saint, cementing her legacy as France's greatest hero. Think about it. In just over a year, she didn't just stop a century of defeat. She taught an entire nation how to win again. She gave France its king and a victory, sure, that she also gave them a hero that would inspire them for centuries. Which really leaves us with one final thought. They could burn her body, but the fire of courage and faith that she ignited, well, that turned out to be truly inextinguishable.